The blackout hit around 11:30 p.m., about 3 hours into my shift. I work nights at a 24-hour convenience store off the A road between two towns. It's one of those places that gets truckers, late commuters, and the occasional drunk person looking for crisps. The pay's decent for what it is, and most nights are quiet enough that I can get through a podcast or two before dawn. When the lights went out, the backup generator kicked in after maybe 10 seconds. It doesn't power everything, just the fridges, the till system, and a few overhead strips. The car park lights stayed dark, and so did the big neon sign out front. I called my manager to let him know, and he said the power company had already sent an alert. Transformer issue. Could be hours. I told him I'd stay. It's not like I had anywhere else to be. And the generator meant I could still ring people up. He said to lock the doors if I felt unsafe, but I figured I'd leave them open. We're supposed to be 24 hours, and I didn't want to lose the business. The first hour was fine. A couple of people came in for fuel and snacks. One guy asked if the pumps were working. They were, thankfully, because they're on a separate system. I sold him a Lucozade and a Twix, and he left. After that, it was dead quiet. That's when I started noticing how dark it was outside. I mean, I've worked nights here for 8 months, but usually the car park lights make it feel less empty. Without them, the windows just reflected the interior back at me, and beyond that, nothing. I couldn't see past the fuel pumps. The road was invisible. I was restocking the cigarette shelf behind the counter when I heard the first tap. It was soft. Just one knock against the glass, like someone testing if it was solid. I looked up, but I couldn't see anyone. The windows were just black squares. I figured maybe it was a branch or something. There's a sad little tree near the edge of the car park, but there wasn't any wind. The air outside was completely still. I went back to stalking, and about 2 minutes later, it happened again. Same sound. Same window, I think, though it was hard to tell. This time I walked around the counter and went closer to the glass, shielding my eyes to try and see outside. Nothing. Just darkness and the faint outline of the pumps. My gut told me to lock the doors, but I didn't. I felt stupid even thinking it. It was probably just the building settling or something. The taps kept coming. Every 2 minutes, like clockwork. I started timing them on my phone after the fourth one. 11:58, 12 o'clock, 12:02. Always the same interval, always the same soft, deliberate sound. I tried to ignore it. I straightened the crisp aisle, wiped down the coffee station, checked my phone. But every time that tap came, I felt my shoulders tense up. It wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. That's what made it worse. It was patient. Around 12:20, I thought about calling the police. I even unlocked my phone and pulled up the non-emergency number. But what was I going to say? Someone's tapping on the window? They'd think I was wasting their time. And maybe I was. Maybe it was just the cold making the glass contract, or a bird, or I don't know. I talked myself out of it. I wish I hadn't. At 12:30, a car pulled in. I felt this rush of relief. It was an older guy, maybe 60, in a high-vis jacket. He came inside, bought a sandwich and a Red Bull, and I almost asked him if he'd seen anyone outside, but I didn't. I didn't want to sound paranoid. He left, and I watched his headlights pull back onto the road and disappear. The taps stopped for a bit after that. Maybe 10 minutes. I thought maybe whoever it was had left, scared off by the car. Then they started again. 12:42, 12:44, 12:46. I turned off the lights inside. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I thought I'd be able to see outside better. The generator kept the fridges humming. But the overheads went dark, and suddenly The only light was the faint glow from the cigarette display in the till screen. I pressed my face close to the glass, his hands cupped around my eyes, and I finally saw him. He was standing about 10 feet from the window, just standing there, completely still. He was wearing a dark jacket, hands in his pockets, and his face was... I couldn't make it out. It was too dark. But I could see the shape of him, the way he was facing me, not moving. I stepped back. My heart was pounding. I thought about yelling at him, asking what he wanted, but I didn't. I just stood there, frozen, staring at this person who was staring back at me. He didn't move. Not for a long time. Maybe a minute, maybe more. Then, slowly, he raised one hand and tapped the glass. Once, twice, 3 times. Then he turned and walked away. Not quickly, not like he was scared. Just a slow, casual walk toward the edge of the car park, and then he was gone, swallowed by the dark. Here, I locked the doors. I should have done it hours ago. I called my manager again and told him I was closing early. He didn't argue. I sat behind the counter with the lights off, watching the windows, until my replacement showed up at 6 a.m. The power came back on around 4. The car park lights flickered to life, and I could finally see outside again. There was nothing there. No footprints in the dirt near the window. No sign anyone had been there at all. I quit 2 weeks later. I told my manager it was because I got a better offer, but that wasn't true. I just couldn't do it anymore. Every time I was alone in that building, I kept waiting for the tapping to start again. I still don't know who he was or what he wanted. Maybe he was just messing with me. Maybe he was high or bored or mentally unwell, but I can't shake the feeling that he was waiting for something. That if I'd opened the door or if that car hadn't pulled in, something worse would have happened. I drive past that store sometimes on my way to my new job. I never stop. And I still think about that night, the way he just stood there, patient and still, tapping on the glass like he had all the time in the world. The flowers showed up on Tuesday night around 2 a.m. I work security at the hospital parking structure, the big multi-story one behind the main building. It's not a bad gig, honestly. Quiet most nights. I do rounds every hour, check the stairwells, make sure no one's sleeping rough in the corners, keep an eye on the CCTV feeds in the little booth on the ground floor. The pay's decent, and I don't mind the solitude. I've been doing it for about 8 months now. The structure has 6 levels. During the day it's packed, but by midnight it thins out to maybe 20 cars scattered across all the floors. Mostly staff who work the late shifts. Nurses, cleaners, a few admin people catching up on paperwork. I know most of the regulars by sight, even if I don't know their names. You get a rhythm to it, same cars, same spots, and same faces coming and going. The car was on level 4 near the northeast corner. A silver Toyota, maybe 10 years old, nothing special. I'd noticed it before because it had been there for days, at least since Friday, maybe longer. Not unusual, really. Sometimes people leave cars while they're admitted as patients, or they're visiting someone long-term. We're supposed to report vehicles that stay more than a week. But I hadn't gotten around to it yet. Tuesday night during my 2 a.m. round, I saw the flowers. A small bouquet, the cheap kind you get from a supermarket, wrapped in cellophane. They were placed carefully on the windshield, tucked under the wiper blade. I stopped and looked at them for a minute. It seemed like a nice gesture, maybe someone visiting a patient, leaving flowers for a friend or family member who owned the car. A bit odd to do it at 2 a.m., but people keep strange hours around hospitals. I didn't think much of it. I noted it in my log. flowers left on vehicle level 4, Bay 47, and moved on. The rest of the night was uneventful. I watched some YouTube videos in the booth, did my rounds, drank too much coffee. The next night, Wednesday, the flowers were still there. They looked a bit wilted under the fluorescent lights. But when I did my 2 a.m. round, there was a second bouquet. Same type, same cellophane wrapping, placed right next to the first one. Both tucked under the wiper blade. That's when I started paying attention. I checked the CCTV footage when I got back to the booth. The cameras cover most of the structure, but there are blind spots, mostly the far corners of each level. Bay 47 was just inside one of those blind spots. I could see the edge of the car, but not the windshield. I scrolled back through the footage from 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. Nothing. No one walking past, no one approaching the car. I told myself it must have happened earlier, maybe during a gap in my rounds. People are allowed to come and go. It's a public car park. But something about it felt off. My gut was telling me to pay closer attention. I went back up to level 4 around 3 a.m. just to check. The car was still there, the 2 bouquets wilting side by side. I tried the door handle, locked. I shone my torch through the windows. The interior was empty. No personal items, no clutter. Nothing on the seats or dashboard. It looked almost too clean, like it had been wiped down. I thought about running the plates, but I didn't have access to that system. Only the police do. I considered calling it in, but what would I even say? Someone's leaving flowers on a car? That's not a crime. I'd sound paranoid, so I didn't. Thursday night, I made a point of checking the car during every round. At midnight, there were still just the 2 bouquets. At 1 a.m., same thing. At 2 a.m., there were 3. I was on level 4 within 5 minutes of finishing my last round. I'd been watching the clock. There was no way someone had gotten past me. I checked the stairwell doors, all closed, no alarms. I checked the lift. It hadn't moved from the ground floor. I went back to the booth and checked the CCTV again. Nothing, no one. That's when the unease really set in. The hair on the back of my neck was standing up. I kept thinking about how clean the car was, how it had been sitting there for days. It's how the flowers kept appearing in the exact same spot at the exact same time. It didn't make sense. I almost called the police then. I had my phone in my hand, the number pulled up. But I stopped myself. What was I going to tell them? That someone was leaving flowers on a car and I couldn't see them on camera? They'd think I was wasting their time. I'd look like an idiot. So I put the phone away. I decided to stay on level 4 for the rest of the night. I parked myself in the stairwell with a clear view of Bay 47, about 20 meters away. I kept the door propped open with my boot so I could see out. I told myself I'd catch whoever it was. Around 3:30 a.m., I saw someone. A figure. Walking slowly along the far side of level 4. They were wearing dark clothes, maybe a coat, maybe a hoodie, I couldn't tell. They moved calmly, or deliberately, like they had all the time in the world. They stopped at the silver Toyota, stood there for a moment, then placed something on the windshield. A 4th bouquet. I didn't move. I don't know why. Every instinct told me to step out, to call out, to ask what they were doing, but I didn't. I just watched. The figure stood there for a long time, maybe a full minute, staring at the car. Then they turned and walked toward the stairwell, toward me. I stepped back, letting the door close quietly. My heart was pounding. I heard Footsteps on the stairs, slow and even, coming down from level 4. I pressed myself against the wall, holding my breath. The footsteps passed my level and continued down. I waited until I couldn't hear them anymore. Then I went back to the booth. I checked the CCTV. Nothing. No one on the stairs. No one on any level. Just me. I went back up to level 4. The 4th bouquet was there, placed neatly with the others. I checked the car again. Still locked. Still empty. I stood there for a while trying to make sense of it. Then I noticed something I hadn't seen before. On the rear windshield, written in the condensation, were 3 words. I'm still waiting. I left level 4 and didn't go back for the rest of my shift. I stayed in the booth, watching the monitors jumping at every shadow. At 6 a.m., when the day shift arrived, I handed over the log and left. I didn't mention the flowers or the figure or the words on the window. I didn't know how to explain it. The next night, Friday, I called in sick. I couldn't face going back. I spent the whole night awake, thinking about it. On Saturday, I went in for my shift. The car was gone, the flowers were gone. Bay 47 was empty, just oil stains on the concrete. I asked the day shift guy if he'd seen anything. He said no, just a normal week. No one had reported anything unusual. I checked the logs. There was no record of the car being towed or moved. It was just gone. I still work the night shift. I still do my rounds. But I don't go near Bay 47 anymore. I don't know who that person was or what they were waiting for or why I couldn't see them on camera. I don't know if the car was ever really there or if I imagined the whole thing. But I can't shake the feeling that they're still there, somewhere in the structure, waiting. And I think about those flowers every night. The job posting said, minimal interaction, mostly monitoring. That's what sold me on it. I'd been working retail for 2 years and I was burnt out on customers. A night shift at a self-storage facility sounded perfect. Quiet, simple, just me and a bunch of locked units. The place is about 15 minutes outside town, off a B road that doesn't get much traffic after dark. It's one of those big facilities with the orange roll-up doors, maybe 200 units spread across 3 buildings. There's a small office at the front with CCTV monitors, a kettle, and a space heater that barely works. My shift runs 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., Wednesday through Saturday. Most nights, genuinely nothing happens. I do a walking patrol every 2 hours, check the gates are locked. Make sure no one's left a padlock open. The rest of the time, I'm in the office doing coursework or watching stuff on my phone. This was my 3rd week. I'd gotten comfortable with the routine. I knew which units had motion sensor lights that flickered, which doors rattled in the wind, which corners of the car park pooled water when it rained. It had rained earlier that evening, not heavy, just enough to leave everything damp and reflective under the security lights. I did my first patrol at midnight, everything normal, a few puddles near Building B, some leaves blown up against the doors. I walked the perimeter, checked the gates, came back to the office, made a tea, sat down. That's when I noticed it on the CCTV. There are 12 cameras covering the site, 4 per building, interior corridor angles. The monitors cycle through them automatically every 10 seconds. When I wasn't really watching, just had them on in the background while I scrolled my phone. But something made me look up. One of the cameras, Building A, 2nd floor corridor, showed a shadow at the far end. Not moving, just standing there. I stared at it for the full 10 seconds before the feed switched. When it cycled back around, the shadow was gone. I told myself it was a trick of the light. The cameras aren't great quality, especially at night. Shadows do weird things. But my gut was telling me to pay attention. I kept watching. For the next 20 minutes, I saw nothing. Then, on Building B ground floor, there it was again. A dark shape, maybe 6 feet tall, standing near Unit 34, completely still. The timestamp said 12:47 a.m. I watched until the feed switched. When it came back, the shape had moved closer to the camera, but it was still just standing there. I should have called the police right then. That's what I think about now. But I didn't. I convinced myself it was probably someone who'd rented a unit and forgotten to sign out. Or maybe a rough sleeper who'd gotten in somehow. It happens sometimes. The gates aren't exactly high security. I decided to do another patrol, grabbed my torch and my high-vis. The air outside was cold and damp, and everything smelled like wet concrete. I went to Building B first, walked the ground floor corridor. All the units were locked. No one there. I checked the stairwell, the upper floor. Nothing. Back in the office, I made another tea. My hands were shaking a bit, though I wasn't sure why. I sat down and watched the monitors. 1:23 a.m. Building C, upper floor. The shape again, and this time I could see more detail. It looked like a person in a dark coat or jacket, hood up. They were standing outside Unit 78, facing the camera. Not moving, just standing there. I watched for a full minute. They didn't move, didn't check their phone, didn't fidget, didn't do anything, just stood there, facing the camera. Then the feed switched. When it cycled back, they were gone. I tried to think it through logically. If someone had a unit, they'd have a key. They'd open it, get their stuff, leave. They wouldn't just stand in the corridor, and if they were trying to break in, they'd be doing something. Checking locks, looking around. This person wasn't doing anything. They were just standing there, over and over in different buildings. I couldn't shake the feeling that they were moving in some kind of pattern. Building A, then B, or then C. But I didn't know what the pattern meant. At 2 a.m., I was supposed to do another patrol, but I didn't want to. I sat in the office, watching the monitors, drinking cold tea. I thought about calling my manager, but what would I even say? Someone standing in the corridors? It sounded stupid. I thought about calling the police, but again, what would I report? No one was breaking in, no alarms had gone off. I'd look like an idiot. So I just watched. 2:31 a.m., Building A again, ground floor. The shape was back, standing outside Unit 12, closer to the office than before. My stomach dropped. I don't know why, but that's when I knew something was wrong. Not maybe wrong, but definitely wrong. Every instinct told me to leave, just get in my car and go. But I didn't. I stayed in my chair, staring at the monitor. And the shape stood there for 3 full cycles, 30 seconds. Then it moved. Not walked, moved. It was suddenly 10 feet closer to the camera, but I hadn't seen it take a step. The footage didn't skip, it just moved. I stood up. I don't remember deciding to. I just found myself on my feet, backing toward the door. Then the lights in the office went out. Not a power cut. The monitors were still on, the little green LED on the kettle was still glowing. Just the overhead lights. I stood there in the dark, hearing my own breathing, watching the monitors cycle through the feeds. Building A, ground floor. The shape was at the end of the corridor now, right outside the door that leads to the office. I grabbed my keys and my phone, and I left. I didn't lock the office door behind me, didn't do a final check, didn't log out. I just got in my car and drove. I called my manager from the car park of a 24-hour Tesco, told him I'd had a family emergency and couldn't finish my shift. He wasn't happy, but I didn't care. I went back the next night because I needed the job. My manager was there when I arrived. Said the CCTV had glitched overnight, and half the footage was corrupted. He didn't mention anything about the office lights. I didn't tell him what I'd seen. I've worked 6 more shifts since then. I haven't seen the shape again. But every time I check the monitors, I'm waiting for it. And sometimes late in the shift, I'll hear footsteps in the corridor outside the office. Slow, deliberate footsteps. They stop right outside the door. Then nothing. I don't open the door to check. I just sit there, watching the monitors, waiting for my shift to end. And I still don't know who it was, or what they wanted, or if they're still there. I just know I'm looking for a different job.